the small T's can be something as small as just like, I wasn't safe. There was a lot of screaming in my house. There was a lack of money. And so I couldn't ask for that $2 candy bar without being told that we couldn't afford it. Therefore, I associated that I'm not worth $2.50.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Exploring You, our podcast to help you navigate the personal development jungle. My name is Alexandra Katzer, nature coach and forest bathing guide. And my co-host is...
Who am I? My name is Daniel Steenberg. I'm with the Elysium NLP and Mind Core CIC.
And today we have Occam Wood, trauma recovery facilitator and energetic health practitioner. Very welcome, Occam.
Thanks for having me. I'm glad to be here.
Hey, Occam. How are you doing?
I'm doing very well. Pleasure to meet you guys.
You too.
So great. No, it was amazing to get you on the show. We met through a In Spirit. It's a network for spiritual business people who want to bring business and spirituality together. And we had such a great talk last week that we decided, okay, we need to get you on board for our show today. So first of all, introduce yourself, Occam. Who are you?
Yeah, who am I? Isn't that a deep question? Well, like you said, I'm an energetic health practitioner and trauma recovery facilitator. So I help people to overcome their past in a lot of ways, right? So I've overcome my own past. I was raised in a family of distortion and trauma, you might say. I like to say I'm blessed by my trauma. I was raised and experienced sexual and physical abuse as a child. And then that led to the drug and alcohol abuse of my teenage years, the dark times, the criminal times, the homelessness, the depression, the suicidal ideation, And I've been coming out of that journey for the last 20 years. And then just in the last decade, I've been focusing in on the energy work of the Reiki. And I'm a level 3 Usui trained level 3 Reiki Master in the Usui tradition with the Holy Fire upgrade. And that's the basis of what I do. But I've also been developing my own method of trauma transmutation and soul integration, which I call the T.T.S.I. And that's to help people truly identify, neutralize, and remove the energetic toxins that build up from unresolved traumas and ultimately lead to disassociated thought forms, belief systems, constructs, attachments, and even conscious entities that can affect the way that we think and feel about ourselves, our reality, and others in our reality. And so it's a method that I've developed that's really powerful. It's really deep and it's really clean, and it can take people from not knowing what the struggle is. Why are we getting stuck in these side loops? Why are we getting stuck in these self-sabotaging cycles, these glass ceilings, so to speak? Why do I continue to choose these addictions? It's really powerful for addiction and suicidal ideation. That's where I really got my start. But now I'm leaning into business owners and entrepreneurs and even CEOs. Basically heart-centered change makers is about as deep as I've gotten for my niche, because I want to help people who want to help people. And so many of us come against some of the stuff that we've adopted through our youth that stop us from accelerating into what we can be. And so I love helping the people who've already dedicated time and energy to bettering themselves and their healing journey, because I like to help them take that next big quantum leap out of that. Now, in addition to all that, I'm also been with my wife for 17 years. My son is 12 years old this month, and he's on the nonverbal autism. He's on the deeper end, or the higher needs end of the autism spectrum, you might say. So he's nonverbal. And so I'm a father, I'm a husband, I'm a son, I'm a brother. And like I said, I like to consider myself someone who's trying to help heal the world.
Wow.
Awesome.
That's a lot of trauma to process as well. So when was the first time you noticed trauma in your life? Because I feel it took me a long time to understand trauma and how my childhood impacted me in my adult life. And I feel a lot of people are still not aware that their early years actually have quite a massive impact on their behavior in adult life. So I'm just wondering, when was for you a realization when you thought, okay, there were quite traumatic events in my life that impacted me?
Well, thanks. That's a great question. And I would say early on, I realized how my childhood was affecting my present time, right? But it wasn't until I got into the ayahuasca and into my 30s where I really finally understood where all these addictions were coming from, right? So even though I understood, like I was wanted to get off of methamphetamines, right? Like at the age of 19, I was homeless. I was about to commit suicide, and I was basically like, who do I get to blame for this, right? Whose name's going to be on this? Who's going to weep when I'm gone and feel the guilt of me taking this choice? And as I went through my past with the molestation from my cousin, to the abandonment from my father, the narcissistic relationships with my siblings, and so on and so on and so on, right? Was it the drug dealer for introducing me to the drugs? Was it the cop for beating the crap out of me when I resisted arrest? Or was there something else, right? And in that moment, as I was cataloging all of these reasons why I had the right to do what I was about to do, I realized that the only person who was in every one of those circumstances was me.
Mhm.
Right. And it was in that moment that I had the clarity that I was telling the story from a neutral event. I was giving it the weight. I was giving it the value. I was saying what it meant, what each one of those scenarios and each one of those relationships actually meant to me, and how they had developed me. Right. And so in that moment, I realized that I could be a product of my past instead of a victim to it. Now, if only it was as easy as saying that, right? It took me about another month to finish getting clean and clear. And luckily, my mom invited me up to Oregon to help her with yet another traumatic event that was going on. And through leaving the area in Colorado where I had been raised and where I'd gotten into what started with cigarettes and then marijuana and alcohol, and it ultimately led to the methamphetamines and the criminality. And I was even about to go to prison at 16 for aggravated assault and attempted murder with a kidnapping charge. So like I had had all of these really deep, dark moments, but in that moment of clarity, I realized that I could choose something different. And so I moved to Oregon, and thankfully I jumped on a commercial fishing boat with a couple of really powerful dudes, really good captains who were fantastic fathers. And they showed me what unconditional love could be like. They showed me what powerful masculinity could be like. And that was the start of my healing journey into who do I want to be? How do I leave the victim mentality and move into the citizen mentality, right? How do I become a part of the world that I want to change? And then there's that famous saying, if you want to change the world, start with the person in the mirror,
Mm.
right? And so over those next 20 years, I went through the AA program, the NA program, all the 12-step stuff, the NLP, the hypnotherapy, the talk therapy. And I did really good, right? Like I stopped cigarettes 17 years ago, then liquor 12 years ago, beer 7 years ago, marijuana after that ayahuasca ceremony 9 years ago. And I've partaken in that again. So I'm not against that medicine, but I mean, all things need to be considered into their value and into their perspective. And I still take great vacations from using that substance just to make sure I can still control my own will. And but it wasn't until I got into the energy work, it wasn't until I got into the ayahuasca and I was really shown what I know now about the energy field and how we're actually created, right? How we manifest or co-create this reality, right? And so it was through the understanding that our spirit body is actually condensing down energy into matter, right? Into matter, a very loosely condensed matter, I might add. We all know scientifically we're 99.9% space, right? So it's a very small amount of condensing that we have to have in order to be able to experience the hot and cold, the pleasure and the pain, the birth and the decay of this third dimensional reality. And what I was shown in these visions that I've been able to channel in and been downloaded through for years of dream school, and also in the ceremonies with that ayahuasca spirit medicine, was that as that energy is condensing into us, it goes through our ego field, and that ego field is everything that we know, everything that we believe about ourselves and others. And some of those are our conscious thoughts, and like, yes, I am a strong man, and I am brave, and I am outgoing, and I like the woods, and I'm these things. But it also goes to those subconscious ones, the ones that start from the time you're born, right? The ones that aren't indoctrinated but are adopted, right? How is my mom treating me? Are my needs being met, right? Am I safe? Am I secure? Or am I being led to cry it out? I think most of us, especially in this age bracket, I think we're all fairly familiar with the term to be seen and not heard, right? Or have you ever heard like, well, just let them cry it out. It'll toughen them up. And I'm pretty sure all of us have heard that saying, I'll give you something to cry about. right? Like when these things are happening, they're creating a belief system for us, you know. And so a lot of people think of trauma as just the big T traumas, the wars, the molestation, the physical abuse, the alcohol abuse. But the more insidious ones are the ones we don't see. They're the small T traumas. They're the things that we adopt because we see how our mom is interacting with our dad. We see how our dad is interacting with his buddies. We see how our siblings are interacting with us, and we're just adopting that this is how reality is. And so a lot of these traumas, I love Gabor Mate says it best, and I'll quote him anytime I get a chance, is that trauma is not the thing that's happening to you. It's the thing that's happening inside of you as a result of what's happening to you, right? So to expand on that, it's the thoughts, the belief systems, and the identifications that you take away from that event. So the small T's can be something as small as just like, I wasn't safe. There was a lot of screaming in my house. There was a lack of money. And so I couldn't ask for that $2 candy bar without being told that we couldn't afford it. Therefore, I associated that I'm not worth $2.50. You know, or so many more of them, right? It could be that one thing your dad said at the kitchen table while you're eating that turns into a body image. It can be the car crash, right? Or let's say getting kicked off the horse, since that's a perfect analogy, right? Two people can get kicked off the horse. One of them decides it's the most dangerous animal ever, and they create a reality where they will never go near a horse. And another person can have the same exact experience and say, that just was a moment in time. And then I conquered that by getting back on the horse. And there's even studies where they studied two twins, right, that were born in the same house, went through the same circumstances, and they were trying to find out why one of them would be an addict while the other would be a perfect, adaptable citizen, right? And it's because these traumas are not universal. They're very individualized, and it's very much about what you think and what you feel and the ideas that you take out of those circumstances, right? And all these circumstances and situations are charged with the emotion, the energy that is in motion at the time that you experience it. And so knowing what energy was in motion when you experienced it, you can track down and identify, okay, well, then what system came from that? Is it a high vibration or is it a low vibration? Because the universe, pardon me, because the universe is neutral and dualistic, right? On one level, it is all one and everything is the same. But on another level, it is both light and dark, pleasure and pain, birth and decay. So it depends on what filter, what lens you are actually allowing that pure information to come in that dictates what you receive. And so as that's received by our brain, it is then transmitted as a thought or a belief, and that's how we create our reality, right? And so that was when I understood what my thoughts and my feelings about the traumas and how they were affecting the way I was living and the choices I was making. So I know it was a little bit of a long answer, but I hope that encompassed it.
Yeah. Oh, fantastic. I also like that you mentioned trauma is not just the big stuff. It's these little things we might not even be aware of, or we just see, oh, it's normal, but it's not normal. It has a massive impact on us. So would you say, is there a modality that had the biggest impact on you in your healing journey? Or do you feel it's like all these little, or all the other things you did and all together helped you to overcome your trauma? Or was there one specifically?
Well, I would say it was an accumulation, right? Because it was the learnings and the teaching. So luckily my mom was really open. So I got to go to a lot of different religious options. And she also was open to the alternative medicines and stuff like that. And so I was open to the science of mind and the power of thought at an early age. But like I said, that was actually before I went into my dark days, right? So it was really about coming back to who are we and who I am. And like I said, every step of the way, the 12-step programs got me a little bit farther, right? The NLP got me a little bit farther. But it wasn't until I was able to address the energetics of it all, the Reiki and what that ayahuasca showed me, right? And the trauma transmutation, that made everything else I knew in my mind actually be valid and accessible. Because you can be a self-help guru. You can buy every single book you have, and you can take it in intellectually. But unless you identify that there's something that's not letting you act on that, there's not only the belief systems and constructs, right? And so a belief system is something that you believe to be true. It can grow as it accumulates the energy. It's stopping the energy from coming in, and it's getting feedback from our belief system. Like, I knew it. I knew that person was going to betray me, and I knew I couldn't trust that. Blah 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 blah. They grow and grow and grow into like a full-on construct, and this is where our blinders really come in, right? It's where we can say, like, this is absolutely true for me, even though Darren has a different possibility. Even though Alexandra has a different possibility, it's not available to me because of the particular parameters that I've been raised with. And so that construct can actually cause the blinders to stop you from being able to put into effect the things that you've already learned, and the different methods like the breath work and the, I mean, like, there's obviously so much to do with mental and emotional and environmental toxins, right? So it's not just a one size fits all, but when you accumulate all these other tools, if you don't know how to use them, or if they're not applicable for the job at hand, it doesn't matter how many tools you have, right? It matters if you're able to open up the toolbox and actually get them, right? And so that's where what I found the energy body does is like, I've worked with a lot of people, especially now that I'm moving into the coaching industry and the more professionals and whatnot, is that they have invested time, energy, and money into programs, and they can watch somebody else finish it and accomplish and do, right? But there's something in me that is wrong. There's something in me that I'm not right. I can't do it. I'm not enough. And that is that filter. That's what needs to get cleaned out. And once that's out, everything else gets easier. Like, literally, I wish I could just put that in my copy, but it's the number one thing that my clients say is like, I thought I was coming in for this, but everything has gotten easier. Everything is coming in cleaner. Everything, I'm not as reactive as I was, right? And so it's about releasing what we think we know and what we believe to be true. And it opens us up to like, oh, it can be different. Oh, it can be easy. Oh, it can be this. And does that mean that everything from this moment on is going to be easy? No, this is life. We're here for the highs and lows. We're here for the pleasure and the pain. But when you clean out the garbage and the baggage that's holding you back and making all this stuff harder to deal with, things just come simpler and easier, and you can move through the hardest of times with a smile on your face, knowing that it's temporary, and getting onto the other side of it. So that's the biggest one for me, because I do believe that that's the first layer, right? That energy coming in, then it's received by the mental, then it's received by the emotional, and then it's received by the physical. And we can also talk about how that affects the actual physical body as it relates to disease and pain as well.
And especially with trauma, and that was what gave me a big understanding dealing with my own trauma, because I've done NLP and I try to solve everything on an intellectual level or with my mind, but a lot of energy was also stuck still in my body, in my system. And that was for me also where energy healing helped, and to understand that trauma energy, especially early childhood trauma, you don't have memories yet. It's all implicit memory. Everything you experience, you store in your body. So energy work to get through the trauma was really a big plus for me as well. Do you maybe want to explain a bit how this energy healing work? When we talked, you also talked about the chakras. I think not everyone might be familiar with it, so it would be great if you could get some insights onto that.
Sure, yeah, and like I said, I'm not an expert in this field necessarily, but what I've learned about it is very applicable. So the Sanskrit word chakra, right? It's actually the wheel of energy, right? And these are things you have to understand, is that our physical body is literally just what we see and feel, right? But there's so much outside of us, and now science is finally catching up to this. We talk about quantum science, and we also talk about the morphogenetic field. So anybody who wants to learn more about this, you can learn more about it from like Joe Dispenza, Greg Braden, Bruce Lipton. These people are actually doing the scientific studies to show this stuff. And Barbara Ann Brennan is one of the ones that I am so blessed that I was able to get her content, because it actually put words to what I was seeing in my dreams, right? It was putting words to this understanding that we are more than this physical body. And when people get into that mind of like, well, it's got to be Newtonian physics, right? Like, I've got to see it and taste it and touch it. It's like, well, do you know how your cell phone works? Do you know how electricity works? Do you know how the sun shines and the grass grows? right? Like intellectually we can know it, but there's something there that's intangible that we have to believe in. We have to have this faith and this understanding that when someone walks into a room with a bad attitude, we can feel it, right? Versus somebody who walks in as like the sunshine just walked into the room. That's the base level. So if people can just grasp that through these feelings we have, they actually can inform the way we act, right? And then to get deeper into the chakra system, like I said, this is literally the energies being pumped into our body. And these chakras are a set of systems. And most people talk about the main 7 chakras, but there can be as many as 24 or even 57. And some people talk about even like greater ones that are way beyond my personal like pay grade, I guess you would call it. At least not yet. I haven't been given that information yet. But these 7 main chakras are able to help channel in the energy of the body and basically metabolize the same way that your stomach turns food into nutrients. This turns that universal life force into applicable energy. And so each of the chakras, in addition to having their own frequency, their own color, right? These bowls are all tuned to the particular frequencies of the chakras, the 7 chakras. So the root chakra comes in at the base of the tailbone, and this is how we get grounded to the earth. This is the first chakra that comes online. And so if you have a life of stability and security where all of your needs are met, your chakra is going to be imbibed in embodying those kinds of energies. And this is also what is affecting on the physical level, the flesh, the bones, the veins, right? And as you go forward into the upper chakras, you go into the sacral chakra right at the belly button. This is the chakra that is responsible for metabolizing energy for your intestinal system, the reproductive system, so the gonads and the uterus. It's also going to process your creativity energy, right? So reproductivity and creativity. So if your sacral chakra is damaged or not processing properly, you may not be able to get through that project. You may not be able to paint a picture or feel like you're creative. But when it's really metabolizing energy properly, you can do amazing things. You can think outside the box and you can create, you can do new things, right? And then the solar plexus, and I'm not going to go through all of them, right? But the solar plexus, which is the power center, this is just between the heart and the belly button. And this is where we get our power from. This is where we interact with our community outside of, so like if the root chakra is self, the sacral chakra can be identified as how we attach to our family, or just those people outside of ourselves. And then the solar plexus is more like how we relate to the outer external world a little bit more, right? And so, like I said, there's so many layers and so many levels of how these chakras interact with everything. And there's even a great book about how they interact with the 7 ceremonies of the Christian religion and also with the Tree of Life in the Kabbalah, right? So this is an ancient knowledge. This is stuff that was known far before writing, far before travel of the world. I mean, depending on what history you believe in. But this is an intrinsic universal truth, just like gravity or anything else, that there are people who've been able to sense into this for hundreds of years. And now that we have technology, we're showing it to be true. And so when you address these different circuits, these different metabolizers of energy, you can actually change the way you think, feel, and act in your relationship to your reality. Does that answer the question a little bit?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah,
I'm just deep with it.
Mhm.
I'm away with this. You know, I'm just listening fantastically by it. I mean, I just wanted to say that it's great that you quite open about your past and the trauma that you've been in. You know, we're working with men and in particular veterans as well. They're very close knit. We don't open ourselves. So it's good to hear that, you know, he's being able to explain and expand on what you've done. What I want to know is where it sounds quite easy for us to say, you know, when we talk about our past, for the likes of us, we're quite open because we've been there, we've done the NLP, we've done the CBT, we've done the ayahuasca, everything like that. Where do you see it for others to be able to be more open? How does somebody become more open?
That's a really good question, because I also like to work with those first responders and the veterans, right? And as men, we're like the phrase "man up" is possibly one of the most toxic phrases ever uttered. because it tells men that they don't have a place, that they can't have their feelings. And so they're trained from a very early age, and especially with the epigenetic trauma of not being able to share. And we literally shut down our sensitivities. We shut down that connection to feeling, even in our physical body, right? Like how many of us have whacked our elbow or smashed our knuckle and like walk in and our wife's like, why are you bleeding? You're like, I don't know. I had shit to do. I couldn't stop and deal with it, because we just have, and that's just that masculine yin yang energy. Like that's just something that's innate. So to get into the awareness that, first of all, being sensitive is not a bad thing, right? It also doesn't mean that you're unsafe. And so a lot of us protect ourselves in the way of like protecting our belly, right? Like we get really closed in and we don't want to be exposed, because one of the biggest dangers, especially for men, it's the same for women too, but for men particularly, the fear of being extradited from the tribe. Right. So having this fear that if I'm going to say something, someone's going to judge me, someone's going to think less of me, or they're going to have fuel or ammo to come at me, right? And one of the things I will tell men is that vulnerability is a superpower. This goes for everybody, really. Vulnerability is a superpower, and it's contagious. So the more we are vulnerable, the more we show people that we can be vulnerable. And believe it or not, when you are vulnerable and you own everything, right? When you own, yes, I made these mistakes. Yes, at 16, I almost went to prison for aggravated kidnapping and attempted murder. Yes, that happened. Then you can move through. What does that mean for me? Does it mean that I'm a murderer, or does it mean that I choose not to murder? Right. And so getting that powerful stage of I am not ashamed of the things I've done, because I choose to not do things I'm ashamed of. Right. It's this really fine line of like when you take that power back for yourself. And so many of us as men continue to perpetuate cycles that the society and our lineage are giving us, without the ability, which I believe is why it makes women so easy at this, is because they are emotional beings, but they're also supported, like, tell me how you feel, and they're creating space for that. And especially the first responders, this is one of the hardest niches for me to break into, because they are hardened. They have to not be affected when they look at somebody who's dying, right? They have to be able to be hardened so that they can shoot across a battlefield and potentially take the life of another human being. They have to stop the innate nurturing and connected sense that we all have. And so they have to disconnect that to do so many of these things. So it's a really delicate and gradual introduction of some of these things. And like, I'll work with a woman and she'll be like, I could feel the energy moving through here. And I'll work with a man like, I don't feel anything. I almost fell asleep. But when I woke up, I felt better. Like, so it doesn't have to always be that way, right? But the openness and the acceptance of that is probably the most important thing. And so that's where I really start with, is helping men to understand, first of all, they're safe. There's nothing that you can say where I'm going to judge you and I'm going to feel like, oh, like I'm better than you or you're worse than you, because a lot of people like will pity people, right? And when you pity someone, you're actually lowering their ability to step out of what they're being pitied for, right? Because you're putting that on them too. So that divine neutrality, coming in and saying, it doesn't matter what you did in your past. We're talking about where are you going forward in the future. And I don't think there's enough room and enough spaces for men to talk safely without the like, oh, you're being a sissy, you're being a Nancy, buck it up, let's go have some beer and shoot something, versus like, I'm hurting, like there's something inside of me that is dying right now, and it's because I'm not able to express it to the light, and so just like that fragile vegetable or flower, like if it's not exposed to the sun, then it's going to wither and die, and it can cause a great deal of chaos and decay in the physical body.
Yeah, there was. I mean, I was watching recently a BBC documentary about men's suicide, and there was a group of friends, and one of them was talking about it, and one of the guys was actually saying to the guys, I'm not well. There's something wrong. I'm not feeling myself," and they just made fun of him.
Like, you just need to get laid, bro.
Yeah. Just go on, get drunk. Let's just go and get leathered, and but he took his own life, and that made a big impact. And the studies have shown where especially when there's a group of people, if there's one suicide, the chances are there's going to be another.
Yeah.
And statistics show that one suicide affects up to about an average of 85 people.
Mm-hmm.
There's always going to be somewhere that someone's going to do the same.
Yeah.
Now, the transition of, and you're absolutely right, trust is a massive thing, especially with men and veterans in particular. But is that trust element to be able to share and have an opportunity to be able to be open and say what you want to say. But for me, it's where do we get that transition? A friend of mine, Midnight McBride, wrote a book, From Pills to Peace, where he's gone from the drug user and dealer to Buddhism, and all the fights and the aggravation and the law breaking in the beginning, and then moving into Buddhism and the complete change that he's had. Any bloke in the street, any man in the street will go, yeah, whatever. That's a load of faff. It's all unicorns and rainbows. How is it that where do we find that way of changing that perception in order for someone to go, actually, it's not rainbows and unicorns, it's actually reality. We need you to open up, we need you to say something. Where do we get that transition?
Well, I think that's the part of the honesty, right? Like that's part of being honest. Like when we are in a culture that does spiritual bypassing and toxic positivity, right? Because too many people, like that phrase, good vibes only, that's almost as toxic as man up, right? That's like, well, that's not acknowledging the fact that I'm hurting right now. It doesn't acknowledge the fact that I have had pain. There have been hard times, right? And so having that awareness of like, we're all suffering at some level or another, right? And pain is inevitable in this life. Pain is inevitable, but suffering is a choice. Suffering we can relieve, suffering we can absolve, right? And so to create a space where people can know, first of all, you're going to come in here and you can trust me, and I'm not going to go back around telling your buds, that you're a Nancy, and to open up the space for that. Because one of the things that I saw as it relates to suicide is that a man is 12 times more likely to commit suicide after a sexual assault than a woman, for the guilt of not even being able to say, like, I was molested and raped, right? Which I'm here to tell you, it happens. As children and as adults, you can be date raped as a man. Absolutely. There's a big difference between consent and coercion. And that's something that men and women need to learn, is that there's a big damn difference between consent and coercion when it comes to sexual interactions. And so to create a space for people where they know, first of all, yep, I hurt too, bud. I hurt too. And I have hurt. And so why stories like that are so important, and why vulnerability is so powerful, because it's showing them that, like, I got through it, man. And I have kind of an interesting point of view on suicide myself. Like I tell all my clients, like, I believe you chose to incarnate. You absolutely can choose to leave. I just hate to see people making a permanent solution for a temporary problem. And I've had at least 10 people come to me and say, I'm going to commit suicide tonight, men and women, right? I'm going to commit suicide on Friday. I've got all my bills in line. I've taken care of everything. I've written my will, and I'm going to commit suicide. I've got the pills. I've got the guns. I've got the knife. I don't want to live anymore, and nothing has worked. 4 hours later, after addressing their energy and realizing that the actual metabolizing tools that can connect them to life and can connect them to something outside of their feedback loop of their past, and all of a sudden they're connected to that, and they're like, oh my God, I'm embarrassed that I ever wanted to leave this planet. I'm embarrassed that I actually let myself get to the point where I thought I couldn't fix this. And like I said, all 10 of these people now, they've gone on to make careers, they've gone on to have children, they've gone on to have marriages, they've gone on to write their books and to do the things that they needed to do to help the world. And so for me, it's always about, like, your choice is your choice. I'm not here to tell you you're right, wrong, or indifferent, but I'd love to share with you the possibility that there is something more that you can try. And it's literally like, it's not a process. It's not a program. It's not a thing that you have to do every day from now on. It can be 4 hours that change your life. Now, obviously, there's a great deal of extra practices like the Wim Hof breathing method and some of these other meditations. And you can get into oils, and then all the, like I said, all the physical stuff like diet and what are you putting into your mind and your psyche and who are you surrounding yourself with. But when people come in and they can sense what can happen literally in 4 hours or 5 minutes, right? Because I also do 5-minute energy shares on LinkedIn. People will come in and be like, I can't believe how much that has affected me in such a short period of time. And then that opens up this gateway of like, oh, it's like a little glimmer of light comes through the clouds. Like, okay, there is actually still a sun out there. It hasn't just completely disappeared. And so being that bridge, being that person who can crack that window for them, who can crack those clouds and say, dude, I was there. I was there, razor on wrist. And I was about to do the thing because I had burnt every bridge. I had done terrible things. I had done things that my mama wouldn't want me at the dinner table after doing. You know what I mean? But that's in the past. And I'm grateful that I've done them because they've led me through this path, right? They've led me to the point where I can now help others. And I think that that's something else that's really empowering, is knowing that through your own journey, you can actually save somebody else as well. And then it gives us even more purpose and more potential and more possibility, right? To bring out and utilize, like I said, these gifts of trauma. I don't think trauma or karma is a punishment. It's training. It's training. And if the world was set up a little differently, if we were about 200 years more advanced in our understanding of individualism and nationalism, we could have a situation where people were raised up being like, you are worthy, you are enough, and nothing that's happening around you is because of you, right? But because we're so egocentric when we're 7 years old, mom and dad's divorce is because I'm a POS, because I did something wrong, because I'm too much, right? And we may know different now, but if that thought is still there from when we were young, we can't get on it. So really opening up the conversation, using our vulnerability to share that this is where I was, this is where I can go. That way they know if I'm here, I can get there. Having a space where they can come and say the worst thing that they've ever done. They can cry, they can be as true as they can be without any kind of retribution, retaliation, or even judgment at a base level. And then letting them know that there's tools and tricks and things that they can utilize to further themselves, to get even farther and farther and farther away from where they are now, really quickly. Really, it doesn't have to be a lot of people like come to talk therapy for 10 years. It's unnecessary. It's absolutely unnecessary when you go to the root of the cause and you create a space where people can be seen, heard, and feel as if they're understood without being judged or without feeling like they need to fit into some quote unquote mold, you know.
It's like the old eulogy in it. Failure is feedback.
That's right.
In a sense, what we fail at in the past, we can actually use that as feedback to go forward.
Yep. And it's only when we think that that failure is the end all be all of our existence that we choose, like I said, that permanent solution for what really is a temporary problem.
So with your clients, what you touched a bit upon, when they come, they feel like, oh, I want to end my life. But what sort of are the reasons people come to you, or what do you feel is the tipping point when people notice, okay, I need to find help, I need someone to support me?
Yeah, I'm glad you asked that question, because I don't want it to seem like this is just for the people who are at the end of their rope, right? Like a lot of the people, especially the people I'm working with now, these professionals, right, who are just trying to be at the top of their game. They've already had some level of success, but they really want to go farther. So some of the catalysts for why people have come to my session is really vague and wide open, which is why I have a hard time niching down. But it's basically like, I'm not happy. I don't feel fulfilled. No amount of money, no fancy car, no young girlfriend can fill this void that I have within me, and I have a family that I'm trying to support, and I have a partnership that I'm trying to make work, but I don't talk to my wife anymore or husband, right? Like I'm in this loveless marriage and there's something there, but I can't get back in touch with it because there's too many little barriers in the way, right? So someone may come to me for like a personal reason, like say I'm grieving. My dad or my partner, or maybe even my child died a couple years ago, and it's a daily thought that consumes me and it stops me from stepping out into what I do. It may be something like I was in a dangerous situation like war, right? Where this PTSD is now every time I hear a loud bang, it takes me right back there. It could be something really even more subtle, like I just don't feel good. I don't feel good. I have this pain in my body, and the doctors can't even tell me what it is, but they're totally willing to go in and do a surgery on it, or they're totally willing to give me some prescription that's going to give me 10 more side effects, And then there's like the business people that come to me. It's like, man, I got a good product here. I got a good system, but I can't make the offer. I can't tell the person that I'm here to help them, right? I served them really powerfully, but then I can't make that sell. And it's like, well, where did you lose your voice? What circumstances causing you to not be able to use your voice? Turns out it was when you were 13 and you told your mom about your molestation, and she said, like, that's just our lot in life as women. Boom, your throat chakra shut down from that point on, and you don't know it. You're just going through life, never being able to stand up for yourself, never being able to step out of your comforts, never being able to ask for that promotion or to make that sale, right? And then there's a great deal of people who come to me with the physical discomfort. And so I've had people come to me for all kinds of different stuff. One of the ones that is drawn to me right now is a woman who came. She'd been in pain for 6 months. Her shoulder just would not heal. She's like 68 years old. And they did, or no, she was 86 years old. Sorry, 86 years old. They'd done all the scans. They'd done all the tests. They couldn't find out what was wrong with her. So they were willing to go in and do an exploratory surgery. And we did our energy work and found out that what was actually weighing her down was all the responsibility in her energy field. She'd been a caregiver since she was a child, and she was still a caregiver now to not only her son, but her husband, who was going into dementia. And when we processed through the energy of that trauma, all of a sudden her shoulder healed itself, right? And one of my clients was able to walk. She'd been in a wheelchair for 2.5 years. And the doctor said they couldn't do anything for her because they couldn't find out the cause of what was happening. There was no nerve damage. There was no broken bones, but she was losing, her legs were literally deteriorating. And we processed through the 13 years of daily ritualistic abuse that she experienced from the time she was born to the time she was 13. And as we processed that energy, 2 weeks later, she walks into her doctor's office and blows his mind. So those are some of the extreme things, but there's many more. They're just like, I've got endometriosis, cystic fibrosis, irritable colitis. I'm dealing with these tumors. I'm dealing with chemotherapy. I have migraines. My eyes aren't working. My ears are ringing. My skin is rashing and peeling, and I'm putting on a bunch of extra weight. All of these things, they all they all don't lend themselves, but they all come out of, in addition to the environmental toxins, right? So like if you're smoking cigarettes, no amount of energy work is probably going to be able to heal your lung cancer, right? But when you've gone through those processes, when you're like, no, I'm already doing everything and it's not quite there, then this energy work can really make a difference. And one thing I found amazing, because 90% of my clients are women, 99% of them have experienced sexual abuse. But even if it wasn't actual sexual abuse, they've lost their innocence, right? They maybe had to go get a job early, or they were the caregiver for their siblings. And so they had that same loss of innocence that can actually show up as the same kind of trauma. And so I've had so many women who we do the work on the uterus, and they've suffered terrible, horrific cycles their whole life, pain, like weeks of premenstrual. And we process through some of the sexual stuff, or just the shame around getting their cycle, right? They were raised with all brothers and they were harassed about their cycle. We process the trauma, and all of a sudden they barely recognize when their cycle's coming around. So that's the physical stuff, but in the most part, it's the mental of like, I just don't feel right. I feel like there's something more for me. Why am I not able to communicate with my children, right? And triggers, that's another really big one, right? How many of us have a trigger? Something that we know is affecting us harder than it should, because it's actually affecting us. It's activating something that's not even happening now, right? This is especially true with PTSD. This is a response that you're having in the now moment that is unbalanced to the actual weight of the environment that you're in now, because it's pulling on all of this extra waste from the past. And so that's usually people like, man, I keep getting triggered. Like every time my wife asks me about the finances, I totally lose my shit. It's like, well, that's because you're actually unsure and you feel like you're failure, and all these blah, 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 blah. So we go into what is that trigger, and what is stopping you from feeling happy and whole and complete. Because as we can look out in the world, people who do their trauma work, people who do have this awareness that they're more than just their stories, these are the people who succeed. These are the people who do great things in the world. These are the people who make great changes in their life and then live a life of happiness. Does it mean that it's all fairies and rainbows, like you said? No. But it means that they have an attitude and an awareness that allows them to navigate those storms with the proper tools and the proper awareness, so that they can find their way out and instead of getting stuck in the storm the whole time. So I guess that was a little all over the place. Does that answer the question? Did I give an example?
Yeah, no, brilliant. And I feel that the trigger points there, yeah, it's really something to learn from. Why do I get triggered? Is it something look inside, you know, what the challenge is, or it's always relating to us. Like you said in the beginning, you know, you need to stop blaming the outside world or your environment. It's all coming back to yourself.
And our society, unfortunately, lends itself to quick fixes, right? Ignoring that depression through alcoholism, ignoring that pain through, you know, sex addiction, ignoring that discomfort by spending a bunch of money, whatever the case may be. Like we always lean into something to compensate for what we don't have. And so the thing we find the most is that when you do address all this stuff and you realize that you actually have it all within you, then you don't have to turn to these external substances and habits and behaviors to actually feel fulfilled, right?
True, totally. Yeah.
But it is a journey. It's not like you say, it's not a quick fix. It's about, and I always use the idea of, you know, it's like taking a course of medication. You're not going to get fixed after the first pill. You have to empty the bottle before you're actually fully recovered. And it's the same, I think, with what we're doing. You know, sometimes you do have that light bulb, or sometimes you do have that inspiration or that instant recognition. But it's about taking the time and the process, because there is a lot of deep emotion. You know, if somebody's like, you know, 30, 40, 50 years, 60 years of age, you know, you've built those pattern of behaviors over that period of time to try and beat back what the past has happened, but you've not truly dealt with it. So you've built up that pattern of it, and it takes a time, doesn't it, to say, look, you know, it isn't a quick fix. It is a process for you to be able to be better at the end of this.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, on some level, right? Because even when I hear that, I know that in a moment you can be healed, right? In a moment you can be healed. It's absolutely positive. Like especially the work of Dr. Dispenza. He talks about the power of our thought on our feeling, right? And we actually can have that moment of like, right now, I claim that I'm healed and I'm going to do that, right? But it is, like you said, it's actually deprogramming. So like, while yes, in the energy field, I can give you instantaneous results, right? And I have had clients who've been like one of them, I don't know why this is coming to my head more than anything, but she was like, I have been angry at my father my whole life, right? And we did one process to allow her to release the belief system she had and integrate a new understanding. And in that moment, she got over her grief and her anger and her despot. And her testimonial says, I finally have a relationship with my father 30 years after his death, because she was able to transmute that much energy in one moment. And just like that woman who was able to walk, right? We didn't do any work on her legs, but we processed the energy that was being accessible to her body, so that within 2 weeks she was able to start walking. So it can happen in an instantaneous moment, but not if your brain is still re-injuring yourself, right? Not if you're not addressing if you're not using the crutch, so to speak, for your rehab, right? Like rehab's a really great one. Like you have a shoulder surgery or a hip surgery. If you go out there and try to do dancing before it's time, you're going to re-injure yourself. So there is that grace period or honeymoon, so to speak, after a session where you can come back up against life and be like, I knew this was temporary. That guy just hypnotized me, and my kids are still being little a-holes, and my boss is still a jerk. And you know, so there is that cultivation of like, oh, wait a minute. No, yeah, that is all true. And yet I'm not an affect of that. Right. And I'm able to separate myself from the cause and actually be the cause myself. So I'm not just the result. And one of the biggest tools I've brought into my practice is that pause, that pause, intentional pause, especially when I'm dealing with my wife, right? Like I'm an energetic healer and trauma recovery facilitator. I still get triggered. I'll tell you what, my wife can say something and all of a sudden she's being really nice. She's just saying something. It's a normal question, but there's still a filter there from some crap my sister said when I was 3, and it comes in and I have to ask myself, oh, I'm actually feeling the heat rising. I'm feeling the anger. I'm feeling my heart rate. Why is this? Taking that moment of pause and being like, okay, is she really being mean to me? Or am I just interpreting it as such? And then you can actually ask yourself a couple of questions of like, what feeling am I having? Is that my feeling? Is it from my thought? Is this my dad's thought? And then you can actually ask yourself like, hey, can I ask you a question for clarity? Right. So the 4 agreements, if you guys aren't familiar with the 4 agreements, super powerful book. It takes you through this process where you can see the thing that's happening as something external and walk through this process of not taking it personally and being impeccable with your word and not making assumptions. And you can ask a question, and it can resolve that easy, right? So it's not necessarily all going to be easy, but as long as you can keep that central mode of knowing that your energy is yours and that you can separate it from the influences of others, then you can go into those things. And like I said, yes, sometimes you have to take the whole bottle, you have to follow through with the process. But I also have seen in my own life and in my own practice that the healing from one state of thought and being to the other can be instantaneous. Sometimes it needs cultivation to keep it there, but it can be instantaneous.
I think it starts with awareness. Once you have that awareness, then it's so much easier to grow
Absolutely.
and stay on track. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. For my 4 A's, it's always awareness, right? Because if you don't know something's wrong, then you can't fix it. Then it's the acceptance that, okay, this either is my fault or it's not, in which case I'm either going to change myself or I'm going to change who I'm around, right? And then the action, because awareness doesn't do much. Like, yep, this sucks. And you just keep on getting hit, you know? But like the action of what am I going to do out of this? And then that leads to the 4th A, which is the ascension. And that's not necessarily, ascension. It's just moving out into a higher understanding and a higher awareness of where you are and out of where you've been and into where you can be, you know? And part of that I will say is having someone who can help you find that awareness, because when we do get stuck in our own trappings, we do get stuck in our own cycles. While yes, you have access to everything you need, you can't read the label from inside the bottle, and you can't pour into your own cup, which is why I think the coaching industry is so powerful right now, because having people who've been down the path and know the pitfalls, know where the poisonous plants are, know where the dangerous animals are, to see you and to reflect back to you the truth, so that you can choose to be aware of it and then decide whether you're going to acknowledge that and accept it or not, you know? So I think it is an important factor.
You mentioned earlier about T.T.S.I. I've been making notes at the side. That's why I keep looking to the side. I'm making notes as I go along, because I'm sure we'll get you back on at another time, Occam. So I always like to make notes and refresh myself when we get you back on.
Yeah.
Can you give us a bit more about T.T.S.I? Tell us what it is.
Yeah, absolutely. So I kind of touched on the fact that like our physical body is created by our energetic body, right? And so as it's going through this filter of our ego, it's informing us of what we think, feel, and act. And actually, that's why it affects the physical body, right? Because this pure white light is going to be absorbed by your DNA, which is actually not the blueprint of who you are. It's actually the journal of who you've been. And so as that energy is absorbed by the DNA, it's going to be either producing itself in perfection or in distortion, right? And so that's why we have the physical body that causes the pains and aches. So the T.T.S.I is a way of actually diving into the energy field and utilizing the awareness that you have around your body to identify, oh, well, if this is a pain in my knee, then what is that? What's the distortion around that, right? Sure, maybe you got hit by a car, maybe you had a training accident, right? But if it didn't heal, what is the distortion that's not allowing it to heal? What's the distortion that's causing the pain to persist? And so that's where the T.T.S.I it's basically a framework that I've created, that I've been channeled into, wherein we are able to charge the body, balance the brain, which is really synchronizing the hemispheres of the brain, and then charging and aligning the chakras. And so through this whole process, I'm bringing in the white light of awareness in connection and in conjunction with your soul team, your angels, ancestors, elementals, and Akashic keepers, right? All those beings that guide and guard you and know you better than you know yourself, and asking them to share with me, right? I get to a 0 point before these sessions. I meditate for an hour beforehand. So my ego is checked at the door. My political and religious and spiritual beliefs are left outside, so that I can come in and hear some of the craziest things I've ever heard without judgment. But it allows me to connect in and, like I said, bring in that light of awareness. What is this pain here? Is there a pain there? Or is it just in the energy body? I can sense the emotion around this particular event. And what does that mean for you? And so we get to dive in, and it's like shining a flashlight into the basement, right? The creepy crawlies have always been there, but now their eyes are going to light up. And we've raised the vibration of the body so high that it's like pumping in fresh air into a moldy building, right? The mold doesn't like that fresh air. The bugs don't like that light being shined in there. And so they all come to the surface. And as we do this process, I use this CARES protocol: connecting, assessing, reprogramming, eliminating, and then shielding, right? So the whole time we're trying to assess, where is this problem coming from? And then once we do, we're able to actually identify it and change the way we think about it, right? So the reason why it's trauma transmutation is soul integration is because it's taking what was a trauma and turning it into a triumph, right? Like, oh, well, am I worthless because my father left, or am I actually a pretty awesome man because I've learned how to be a good father despite him, right? Am I a junkie because I took drugs, or am I powerfully sober now in my willpower and the strength that I've gained from that? So we're literally taking the things that were holding you down and causing the lack, and bringing it into the light, and actually asking, well, if you are a soul being and you chose to incarnate, and you asked your parents to come down and be a-holes, you asked your kids to come down and be struggles and inspirations, you've asked your boss to come give you that guff, then why would you do that? What is it about your personal journey that all of this training, just like the military, right? What is this training getting you ready for? It's getting you ready so that when it comes time to execute, you have everything that you need. But if you don't ever realize that you're still stuck in training, then you'll never execute. So it's really a combo, right? So the T.T.S.I combo is the 4-hour deep dive, and it can be 3 hours sometimes, but I found 4 hours is really sufficient to allow for the greatest amount of vibrational altering as well as mental talking. It's a little bit of a mix between an energy session and a talk therapy session, because I don't know everything, right? So it really is this, I got a little bit, you got a little bit, oh, there's the answer, right? That's how this all comes together. And then it's a 2 weeks worth of support. So we've charged the body, we've identified and eliminated the toxins, whether that be a thought form, belief system, attachment to a person or a time, or even, like I said, a thought form or a conscious entity, which I don't think I fully explained that. So I'm totally happy to go there if you guys want to know about the entities. But then we've removed those. How do you live now? How do you get back into your life? What is the 2 weeks like after that, when you're like I said, you're like, I'm all high vibe and then I got a flat tire? This means that life still sucks and I was wrong, right? No, it's about moving through. So I support people through that 2-week integration period so that I can help them, remind them who they are. And most of the times it's literally just check-ins like, yeah, I had this crazy dream, or, oh my gosh, my mother-in-law almost triggered me, but she didn't, because I got I took the higher ground or whatever. And then we do a 2-hour follow-up. And that's really the integration motivation session. That's really where it's like, all right, we've got rid of the crap. We're healing for our body. We're healing our mind. Where do you want to go from now? Where are your goals? What is your business goal, your personal goal, your family goal? And how do we call in and integrate the elements of the universe that can support you with that? How do we get you in contact with your spirit guides in a way that can lead you in that direction? Or even like, what kind of person can I connect you with for the next step of your journey, right? Maybe you need an advertiser or a business person or someone. So I have a large network of affiliates or referrals that I give. But that second session, that's really about, where do you go now? How do we top you off and integrate what your soul's purpose is so that you can go into this world, not just being like, okay, well, at least I'm not that anymore, but what am I now? How do we move forward? How do we use this momentum? Because like I associate this trauma session like the marathon runner or the sprinter who works with the weights on their wrists and their ankles, right? And they put on a backpack full of water and they go walk through the sand, and they get so good, they get so good, they get so good until they get that maximum that they can reach. But then right before the race, they drop all that and they double their speed, they double their endurance, they double their potential, right? So this is all training. Let's get rid of all the weights, the baggage, the chains, so that you can move forward and propel yourself really powerfully and successfully into your future. And for that session, I do usually use the bowls to bring those chakras to the highest vibration possible. So that second session is much more like a spa day. The first one's kind of like trauma triage, find the bullet, get it out, 2 weeks worth of change in the dressing. And then that last session is kind of the rehab, so to speak. It's like, okay, now what do we do? What do we set you up with? And then obviously I do offer multiple sessions, but most of my clients will come for a particular reason. We absolve that. and maybe they'll come back like, oh, that brought up another thing, or whatever. And I do offer also packages, so like they're not all deep dives, right? Maybe you just want to come in once a month and take care of yourself and do your energetic tuning because you've got 4 kids in a business you're trying to run, and a sick mom at home that that you just need someone to pour into you. And so there's multiple ways that I work with people in that regard. But that T.T.S.I, that's my signature session. That is something that I've created and developed, that wasn't trained. So there's no lineage that I have to beholden to. There's no textbook that I have to make sure that I'm checking off the list for. And I use portals. So I use sacred geometry and ancient techniques to open up portals to connect myself to the individual across space and time, outside the restrictions of the 3 dimensions, into the quantum and morphogenetic field. And so like it can be really, really powerful, and you can feel the energy surging through your body, and you can feel these releases. And so that's my favorite thing to do as a T.T.S.I. And the longest one I did was 7 hours, but that was only
Wow.
because it was a split personality, and I actually had to process the trauma for the first identity before we could access the core identity. And to this day, she's not had another psychiatric break after that session. So it was an intense and deeply, deeply moving session, but that's not usually the case.
Mm.
Awesome.
Wow.
Fantastic.
Yeah, sounds amazing. And I mean, we had a quick session last week as well, and I felt it, you can feel the energy moving through your body. It's really beautiful. Yeah.
Yeah, and I also want to be clear too that it's not from me, right? Like that's the best thing. If you ever have a practitioner who's like, I'm going to heal you, or I'm going to take that on for you, be wary, right? Because the best channels are just that, channels. I am not a vessel. I'm not pouring out of me, right? So even in that 7-hour session, I left that session jacked up. I wasn't like drained because I was trying to do something. I was getting out of my own way, and I'm just the conduit for this universal life force, this universal truth, this essence of God or Christ, whatever you want to call it. And I'm not giving you anything from me. I'm just acting as the end of the hose, so to speak, to where to direct it and how to manipulate it. And when I take something from you, it's not onto me. It's actually giving it up to these portals and to this universal transmutation. So I never take on anything from my clients. And I've heard of a lot of practitioners who are like, man, I get drained after a session, or I get sick once a month. And it's like, you're not processing the energy properly if that's the case, right? You should be feeling completely whole and healthy going into a session and coming out of a session as a practitioner, because it's not of me. This is, like I said, the same stuff that it'd be like me saying, like, when I open this window, I'm making the sunshine and the grass grow, right? That's not the case. It's just something that's there. I've been trained to utilize, and through the Reiki and through the ayahuasca, I've had a deeper understanding of how to do that.
Fantastic.
Brilliant.
Then do you have any other questions, Darren?
Oh, I've got a notepad full of questions, but I know we're conscious of time. I'm good for now, but I do have a question. Would you come back on?
Absolutely. This is
That's great.
this is my favorite thing to do right now, right? Like I said, I think that the reason why I was blessed with those traumas is because I'm supposed to be sharing them. And it's taken me 3 years of practice to feel this confident. And like literally my guys were telling me, like, don't go talk about this because you don't know what you're doing yet. And people are going to feel one way or another about it. But I've been given the all clear this year that I'm supposed to be talking on as many stages and touching as many people as I can this year. So I'm really blessed to have heart-centered individuals like yourselves that are creating the space for this. So yes, I'm more than happy to come back and talk. I'm happy to do anything as far as it goes to share and to shift, because I truly do believe that as we heal ourselves, we heal each other. And as we heal each other, we heal the collective. And as we heal the collective, we can change reality.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think
Love
it's
it.
something that we know to share a bit more. I'd like to deep dive into some of the other stuff you're talking, and
Yeah, because
get a
this is
bigger
the
picture
lightning
of-
round of my story. I could literally go into hours on any of those topics. You want to hear about the ayahuasca ceremony? Oh my God, that was mind blowing, and how I almost went to prison was like, whew, a whole big thing. So yeah, 42 years. This is the shortest version of that story.
Brilliant. That's good for me.
Great. Then I think it's your 5 minutes of fame. You can promote yourself.
Awesome.
Where
Thank
people
you.
can find you. Yeah, just go.
Yeah. Yeah, so you can find me on almost all platforms as Occam Wood. I'm pretty much the only Occam Wood out there. My business is named Razor's Edge Energetics. So, for those of you that didn't catch, Occam's razor is the theory the simplest solution is most often the correct. And I picked up that name Occam when I got sober, and I've been Occam longer than I was Timothy. So you can find me on as Occam or under Razor's Edge Energetics on almost all platforms. Really loving LinkedIn right now. And every Monday at 4 p.m. Pacific time, we are doing that free Reiki share with my partner, Jamie. And so you can always find me there. Hit me up on any DM. I'm really quick to answer when I get a chance. And I do have several offerings, including a rapid, what I call a quantum power up. So that's where you just basically send me a request. I take a couple minutes and send energy to you, and then I respond with a message explaining what I received and what I did for you. So that's like a pretty entry level option right there. And I do offer free clarity calls. So if you go to occamwood.com, you can find my information there. And on YouTube, Razor's Edge Energetics on YouTube. I've got a few videos there talking about what I do, and I plan on populating that quite a bit more now as well. So find me anywhere as Occam Wood.
Yeah,
Fantastic.
I did check you out. I did check a couple of the videos out myself. So yeah, well worth the watch.
Good. Awesome. Thank you all. Thank you so much.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for having you on the show. And yeah, I'm sure we see you soon again.
I love that. I love that. I really do want to collaborate too. So I just want to put that out to any of the other people who do have a system like the NLP or like other therapies or coaching systems. Like, bringing in an energetic practitioner can take what you're already doing to that 100% success level, right? It really is worth exploring how this could help you do what you're already doing. And also, I really want to support retreat people. So if you're putting on a retreat and you get drained from your retreat, imagine having someone there that can tap you into the universal force and charge your battery every day, as well as do on-demand pain and anxiety relief. I can stop pain and anxiety in about 5 minutes. So I would love to start supporting more and more of these leaders who are leaders of love and who are creating change in the world. So if anything I've said has at least sparked your interest, or you want to call bullshit on it, either way, give me a call. That's a conversation I'd love to have.
Great.
Awesome. Talk about putting a final line on it. Come on, bring it on. Well, anything more, Alexandra?
Not from my side. I'm good.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I'll let you finish up, because I'll just throw out the supporters as we normally do. Promo Doodle, Professional Bodyguard Association, the Burnley and District Motorcycle Club, and Mira Gavaccio. And if anybody does want to put any donations towards the Retreat and Training Centre for our men and veterans work, then you can get onto GoFundMe or even join us on Easy Fundraising and the Mindcore CIC. Enjoy the show. Please share, like, comment, subscribe, everything. Get in touch. Let us know how you feel about it.
Great. Thanks, everyone. See you soon.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Occam. Take care. See you soon.